Hello everybody, I'm Ajit Mishra. I'm here again with a very important session. Let's take a look at how we can understand emotional intelligence. If you remember, I told you that there are signs with the help of which we can understand whether somebody has empathy or not. Similarly, there are certain signs with which we can understand whether a person has low emotional quotient or intelligence or high emotional intelligence. So let's take a look at the signs of low EQ. If somebody is argumentative, somebody frequently gets into some kind of argument. You say anything, that person will always create an argument out of it. If that is the case, you know the other person is low on emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence will mean that you can easily take the perspective of others without arguing much. So if somebody is argumentative, that person is low on emotional intelligence. Blaming. If somebody believes in blaming, if somebody engages frequently, regularly in the blame game, then you know that person is very low on emotional quotient. Because the person will never try to understand one's own emotional states and the emotional states of others. The person can never take the perspective of others. The person can only do one thing, that is to blame, come what may. So irrespective of anything, the person will go on blaming others for one or the other thing. So if a person plays the blame game regularly or frequently, then you know that person is very low on emotional intelligence. Not listening. If I don't believe in listening to others, if I believe in speaking only without listening, I can expect people with the same kind of attitude. They also may not believe in listening. So not listening will mean that a person is very low on emotional intelligence. It also means that a person is very low on empathy. So not listening will mean that a person has very low emotional intelligence, because by not listening to others, we cannot take their perspective, we cannot understand their emotions, we cannot try to understand their points of view. I mean, when that happens, we do not understand anything about the person by not listening, because listening is one such activity that allows us to get into the other person's position smoothly, because we're not doing anything then, we're just focusing on that person. Just imagine when we watch a movie on screen, we keep silent, we're not speaking. That's a form of listening, because we're listening to the dialogues or those statements of the characters on screen. We're just watching and listening. Similarly, when we listen to others, it will mean that we are watching them and we are listening. So that way we can easily connect with them. And then if somebody experiences or shows emotional outbursts, like suddenly very angry and extremely angry, suddenly very sad and extremely sad. If someone shows emotional outbursts, then you also know that the person is very low on emotional intelligence. So in order to understand these things more, let's take a look at this comparative table. On one side of the table, you see the qualities or the characteristics of people who have low emotional intelligence. On the other, you have the qualities of people who have high emotional intelligence. So for low EQ, these are the qualities. We can easily pick that a person has low EQ, and we can easily say that a person has high EQ if that person shows these qualities. So let's start with the low EQ qualities. Somebody is very aggressive in conversations, in interactions, in teamwork. If somebody is very aggressive, that person is low on emotional intelligence. demanding, egotistical, bossy, confrontational. So these are some of the qualities that actually point towards a violent attitude, a superiority attitude by a person, and such an attitude will mean that the person is low on emotional intelligence. Similarly, a selfish, impulsive attitude will also mean that a person is very low on emotional intelligence. A resistance to change, passivity, unresponsive, that is emotional passivity or emotional numbness, slow, slackness, will also mean that the person is low on emotional intelligence. Similarly, if a person is very critical, picky, fussy, and perfectionistic, that will also mean that that person is very low on emotional intelligence, because such people will always find faults with others and they will promptly blame others. So they are the ones who promptly blame others. So such people with such qualities are very low on emotional intelligence. On the other hand, people who are assertive, ambitious, driving, strong-willed, decisive are high on EQ, and then enthusiastic, sociable, persuasive, they are also very high on emotional intelligence. People who are patient, stable, predictable, and consistent are very high on emotional intelligence. Similarly, people who are very detailed in their approach, they are careful, they are meticulous and very neat in their approach. They are very high on emotional intelligence. So that way we can always tell that some people are very high on emotional intelligence and some others are not high or are very low on emotional intelligence. So in order to understand a few other very important things related to emotional intelligence, let's take a look at two very important models of emotional intelligence one by one. So let's start with the ability model of emotional intelligence developed by Salovey and Mayer. So the ability to perceive emotion, integrate emotion to facilitate thoughts, understand emotions and regulate emotions to achieve personal growth is the focus of this ability model of emotional intelligence. And the ability model actually recognizes four distinct types of ability when it comes to emotional intelligence. So let's take a look at these four distinct types. The first one is emotion perception. If I can perceive the emotion of others well, especially through various expressions, it can be gestures, postures, facial expressions, or even verbal expressions as well. If I can perceive the emotion of somebody, then I have that ability of emotional intelligence. The second is emotional integration. So, if a person can easily integrate one's emotion to achieve a desired outcome, then we know that that person has emotional intelligence. For example, when a child knows when to speak to the parent for a certain thing, because the child cannot speak to the father always for that particular thing. The child understands that the father is in a very bad mood now, so this is not the right time to seek permission of the father for a certain thing. If the child knows when the father is in a good mood, when it can go and approach the father is a request for a permission for a certain thing, then you know the child has emotional intelligence. We do so. For example, the boss is very upset today, so no employee would like to go and meet the boss with a request because we know it will be rejected promptly by the boss. So that kind of ability, that kind of intelligence will help us understand and integrate emotions. We now come to the understanding of emotions. It's an ability to build up an understanding of the complexity of emotions, because there are so many emotions that are not easily comprehensible on the surface only. They are far more complex than we know them to be. They can be a combination of various emotions in one place. It can be a combination of sadness and anger. So if I do not know, if I do not have that intelligence to understand that it's a combination of sadness and anger, I may end up understanding it as either sadness or anger. So that will create a problem for me. The fourth is managing emotions. So we all know that managing emotions is very, very important. It's a very important ability to regulate emotions in both ourselves and in others as well. It's not about regulating one's own emotions. It's about regulating others' emotions as well. For example, if my friend is feeling very angry, and if I have that ability to help my friend overcome that particular strong emotion, then I can say I have the ability to manage emotions. So this management of emotions is both self-directed and externally directed. So that way, these are the four distinct types of abilities that we generally come across when we look at the ability model of emotions. So managing emotions will also mean that we are in for some emotional manipulation. We can easily manipulate others' emotions. That happens. We generally manipulate others' emotions quite well. But then this manipulation also has a positive side, when we can easily help somebody cool down by shedding a very strong emotion. That's an instance of positive manipulation of emotions. So these are the four important aspects of the ability model of emotional intelligence developed by Salofi and Mayer. Now we go to the next model of emotion or emotional intelligence, which is developed by Daniel Goleman. And this model of emotional intelligence is very popularly called the mixed model. It also has various dimensions. Let's start with the first dimension, which is called self-awareness. So if we are self-aware, we know our strengths, our weaknesses or shortcomings, and then we can easily determine how we respond in certain situations. So that kind of information gives us the power to meet our goals and then create a fair and inclusive culture. So that also helps us go around and meet people, interact with them in a much confident manner. So it all depends on the kind of self-awareness related to our emotional awareness that we have created. The next one is self-regulation. So self-awareness is about knowing what's going on, and self-regulation is about doing what I can do about what's going on. So it may happen that emotionally charged environment is usually fraught with unresolved conflict. So it also feels very tense and distracting. So that's exactly where if we can contribute in some manner, then we can say we know how to self-regulate ourselves, because there are various emotions that will act as obstructions or roadblocks on our way to a certain achievement. So if we can self-regulate or control those emotions, it will mean that we can easily overcome those challenges. The third is motivation. So it is again self-motivation. It is not motivation that comes from outside. It is motivation that is continuously cultivated, that is continuously pursued internally from inside. So it is self-motivation. We generally do it for ourselves to fulfill our personal goals and needs. and to drive higher performance. So that is the kind of motivation which will always keep us in the hunt for excellence. Otherwise, we'll promptly lose contact with ourselves when we do not have any external motivation. So the internal motivation or self-motivation is far more powerful and productive than the external motivation. The fourth is empathy. Empathy, as you all know, is one of the most important things, is very, very powerful if we can understand the emotions of others, and if we can relate to them. We can see problems from all perspectives, from our perspectives, from their perspectives, and we can also make objective decisions without going or taking any perspective. We can go for an objective decision-making process. And then we also know that empathy diffuses bias, because we have taken the perspective of everyone. Now we can think about the problem in an objective manner. And then we come to the social skills. So having solid and great social skills such as active listening and verbal communication, non-verbal communication, leadership and persuasiveness will enable us to connect easily with people around us, be it our colleagues at the workplace, be it our family members, be it our friends, be it anybody around us. So when we have great social skills, it will mean that we can easily handle any kind of social situation. So that way we come to the end of this session. I'm sure you have taken note of the various aspects of emotional intelligence that I talked about, and you are going to explore those things on your own to know more about them and to develop those skills in you, so that you can ensure your wellness, your success at workplace and in your personal lives. So when I meet you again, I'll be meeting you with another session. Until then, it is bye-bye from me.